Here's a few things that we caught while managing your account over this past year and how we pivoted away from it to increase productivity and customer service levels on your end. And then, like, inside of these year end things, and that's why I hate calling them reviews, is because a lot of customers, it gives them that opportunity to just immediately go to price and say, we could stand to use better pricing. It's not, that's not the point of this. Now we have a full historical set of data. Here's what I think we can do in the near future. And now that we're approaching the end of the year, this gives us an opportunity to start looking through our portfolio of carriers and really hone in on what carriers are going to have the most success, not only with your pickups, but do we stand to gain better pricing with these? So then it becomes a conversation of here's what our plans are with CSP. Based on what you ship and where you ship and who you ship to, here's the carriers that we feel are going to be best suited to maneuver your or to move your freight from point A to point B. And then more importantly, Mr. Customer, going into the 2025 year, we want to hear from you on what does your 2025 plans look like? Are you introducing new product types? Are you looking at another area of the market that you haven't necessarily had as much success in targeting as a target market that you're going to try to sell to? Do you have any big projects, new product lines? Like all of those things. And then the biggest question is, what is their expected projection from a sales stance? And do they have a budget that they're trying to stay within, whether it's a percentage of the sales that they're allotting for freight?
Before I came into logistics, I spent most of my career working in brick and mortar retail and also e-commerce. I was a buyer. And so at the end of the year, I had to go through all of those different numbers and take a look at what happened. Because what's so important around Q4 is it's the largest chunk of data. We've got through the summer, we've got through the pause of people not buying before Black Friday. So now you've got really good set of data. You can start to spot trends and you can see what's been selling, and that sets you up for the new year. As a carrier, we're actually important, but we're quiet. The cost of freight is usually in the top three line items on a P&L, but it's not a very sexy thing to talk about. And so freight gets pushed aside. But once you start looking at the company as a whole, every single department at the end of Q4 is looking at how did they do. And it's not just on what was shipped and the numbers that came through, it's also impact of customer service. Were there issues with deliveries that then impacted customer service, that customers were leaving poor reviews and canceling orders? So then the company looks at what are the overall strategic goals for the year. And so it's not always a matter of let's look at what we sold, what was the cost of freight, and we want cheaper rates. What are the strategic goals of the company? Did poor customer experience, poor delivery result in an impact on sales? Do we now need to look at maybe some different types of carriers, better carriers? It might cost a little more at the beginning, but will they give a better service? And that's going to result in better sales. Everybody's always looking to make more profit, improve the bottom line, but that isn't necessarily the line item of freight. We need to look at this holistically. So right now we have to let our customers be. They're in the height of Q4, they're in the height of Black Friday, and then we just pause, let them do what they need to do, and then we regroup in January, February, so that we can align with everything that happened for them at the end of Q4, but more importantly, what are their corporate strategic goals so that we can align with them going into the new year.
I think that, in a year end review or annual review, or just to look at, like you said, you have the most information for that year, hypothetically. So you should be able to make the most trend lines on that. I think most customers, companies are looking at hard cost of actual, hey, how do we get better freight pricing? And I think we're skipping over so many of the soft costs that we're trying to work on to get us to that pricing efficiency throughout the year. You have to look at it a year on basis because you can improve pricing every year. You can't actually get better pricing every year over and over again. It's a cycles, right? And the only way that you can make sure that you're in I would say the top quartile of pricing in that industry and in that sector is to know that your efficiencies, your soft costs, the things you're doing to improve how you get your pricing are in line so that you always have the best pricing you can get for that market and that freight, where the freight industry is at. Because it goes like this: some years you're going to have worse pricing than others, but it's still better pricing than other people have in that time frame. I like the idea of, having a partner like Rocket have all of your freight data in a single TMS, whether it's, a direct tariff or a brokerage or whatnot in there. And now you see everything as a whole. The issue is, if I'm a customer moving freight and I'm wanting to do this type of a process at the end of the year, what am I going to do? I'm going to go pick out every data set from the 2 to 3 brokers I'm using, a couple direct tariffs. How are they ever going to be able to pull true trend lines out of them? And to me, you need to get us to where we want to get in pricing. You need tech to help us identify soft cost issues with sales, customer service, and then tying them back to those specific shipments and specific carriers. So to me, it's looking at all the things that we've helped that customer go through the year, but it's also identifying the soft cost issues, the efficiency issues that maybe we were able to improve. That is going to help us improve the hard cost of pricing as we go forward.
So I was just thinking about some of the clients that I've dealt with. They have a huge challenge pulling the data. So when we're saying, think about when we ask for freight analysis, how often they can't pull it. They can't find the information. God help them if they're doing FedEx with all the million PDFs for every single shipment. So I think your point about having all of the shipment data within the TMS, whether we own that contract or not, our analytics and tech can actually save them time to pull the data so that they can properly analyze that and get ready for their own internal year-end review. Like, they have to do their own internal what happened before they can even start to explore with their partners what to do next. So if we can support them at that earlier stage.
A lot of times you're bringing up issues they didn't even know they had just because of trends. There's many times where we'll bring on a customer to our TMS. Obviously, part of the sales process is letting them know that, hey, we do have third-party rates, but we're more than happy to bring in your direct rates. Our goal is to get everything in one spot for you and then really give you that control tower view. And it'll take a year to really build that trust. They see our rates here and there, maybe, but they're only using their direct rates. And all of a sudden we get in, we build that trust, and holy cow, there's a lot of potential savings here. And then we can have that conversation to dive in and say, I don't want to just post 15, 20 extra rates on the rate table with all these other carriers we have. It's more to let you know there's savings potential out there if we can parse your freight into regions or into segments that allow us to use other carriers that have better pricing than typically a national carrier that they're dang near all in with. So the data is what gives you trends. The platform is what helps you to visualize the data. And then between the customer knowing their product and us knowing freight, we can come up with some pretty cool ideas to optimize and solutions above and beyond just, hey, is it the time of the year to go try and beat up the carrier to get better pricing? There's a lot more that can go into it that'll give you a lot smoother ride in making sure your pricing is maybe a little bit more consistent. Again, it's never going to go down every year. There's going to be those ebbs and flows, but I would rather see consistent ebbs and flows than up and down where you really can't predict what's going to happen and you don't know if that next shipment's going to be crazy high priced or not.
As we move further into Q4, companies are starting to conduct what they like to call their year-end reviews, which I hate the word review in general. I prefer to call it an end-year wrap-up or New Year goals planning strategy type of meeting. It just sets a different level of feeling when you're sending that invite out to the customer. And I think each account level, it doesn't matter if it's enterprise or if it's mid-market or even a smaller customer, you're going to come prepared with a different set of strategy and level set as to what occurred inside of this past year and what you want to see happen in 2025 or whatever that next year is. So me personally, I always come prepared with reviewing notes prior to that meeting as to what commitments were stated on either side, whether it's us or the customer, that exchange of commitments and expectations. And this could be down to the volume expectations or carrier selection, customer service, claims, as well as price. And you obviously come into that meeting with some historical data that kind of pinpoints what worked what didn't work, how we overcame obstacles or difficult situations that arose and pivoted to that next solution so that it didn't happen moving forward. And that could include trends and variances, what was billed beyond what was quoted and why it happened. So then you're looking at the performance amongst carriers as well. What was that overall performance? What kind of impact did it have on your customers? And then from there, you just move into the numbers a little more extensively, year over year growth, if they're a customer that has been around a while, or if it's a new one that you've only had for just a couple of quarters or a couple of months even. It's here's what we know, here's what we don't know, and here's what I think we can do moving forward. I think that just leads into what is that next step we can take with XYZ carrier or ABC carrier. We now have a stronger data set to look at. We know the trends. We know what little hidden variances or items that jump out that have a strong impact on price that gives us better leverage to then go approach that carrier with a potential CSP, or maybe it's lane based with a regional carrier. I think what the customer's intentions and their plans are for the upcoming new year, that can, for us at Rocket especially, diving into what those intentions are for the following year, that can really continue to seal the deal again and maintain that relationship, because you're trying to get perspective on what are they projecting from a sales stance? What is their budget percentage for shipping? Are they introducing new products or planning any projects? The more you continue to dive into that company and what their next chapter or phase in their business is, I think the better you come out knowing what they want to see, what they're trying to plan for, and it helps us build out a better strategy for them with their next chapter of business.
But that's an important point too, is having the intention of really getting to understand your customer's business and really bringing maybe some unique thoughts or ideas to the table is one thing, but it's pretty hard to do if you don't see the whole picture, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's how a lot of companies are working with their freight providers. I want to tell you my vision and I want you to bring me ideas, but you only get to see the portion of freight that you get. That's it. And so at the end of the day, to really be a valuable partner, you have to see the whole picture. Even if what you're providing in terms of brokerage rates or whatnot is only a small portion, which is completely fine. That you're doing what's the best for the customer, but it's pretty hard to offer really unique insight and to be a valuable partner if you don't see the whole picture from the level that they get to see.
That's a really excellent point, because if you look at all the brokers and all the 3PLs out there, your larger billion-dollar entities, when they're running their year-end reviews, for the most part, it's very much here's what you did this year, here's what you did the year before, like a basic apples to apples comparison. And although they know some insight on that customer and that business that they're working with, they don't truly understand the ins and outs. They don't know why, from a buyer stance, why the buyer is getting involved in the shipping and why price is so crucial, and how that flows back to what the end all be all number is when it does come time to process that order and physically get it out the door, because they have product coming in. They might be manufacturing it there on site or adding something to it before it finally gets out the door to the end user. So if you don't spend the time to fully understand that business as a whole, and even from an accounting stance, it's one thing to think they're shipping and their quote unquote in due out process, if you will, unless you have physically dove into what goes on with accounting, marketing, the project managers, the sales team, how it all comes together to get it out the door, and then what kind of impact that delivery might have on their business and how to react from it, then you really have no business managing that customer.
You don't get a seat at the table. It just seems like the view on freight pricing, depending on the size of the customers, if you're smaller, you want to keep that pretty close to your chest. I do not want to show anybody else that's looking to be a partner of mine pricing that I'm getting elsewhere. I want you to give me an honest, fair bid, not try to beat somebody else out. But at the end of the day, that is the goal, is to figure out who works best where, not who's going to give you the best price for all of it. even though they can't service a good portion of it very well. And so as you get bigger or you have a more complex supply chain, you want to be transparent with what you're getting from other partners to give you a true idea of calling BS on somebody that's trying to get your business, that's just trying to be a better price and not offer anything more than that.
From Rocket Stance, we are not just here to get your shipment from point A to point B. We are definitely more consultants in the industry and totally wrapping our head around what your organization does and how the overall mix goes from the minute the order's placed till it gets out the door, and then all the things in the back end as well. And that gives us the opportunity to take it to the next level and go that next step of understanding, okay, if this customer ships 100% or even 50% to residential locations, of those items that are going to residential location, what does the commodity mix look like? And is there an opportunity to save them on some of these extensive accessorial charges like liftgate and residential, not just by asking for rate reduction from a standard LTL carrier, but looking deeper within our portfolio to say, okay, we actually do have a solution and it's going to maybe knock that rate in half. How? You'll have to contact Racket to find out.